Richard, who was the head of the company in Vienna, created the first Christmas lights that were all colored, and they were 12-volt Christmas lights. And we had hundreds of them in our house that we busted every one of them because there was no value to them. 12 volts wasn't even used anymore. Dad could care less. There was no such thing as keeping antiques. You got rid of them, you threw them in the junk. So we pop them, hear them pop against the wall, hand-blown Christmas lights, different colors. Dick, myself, and Father Larry. And anyhow, he went there to help this electric company, and I've got the name of it in the thing. I can't remember the name. But Wolfram is the filament that was used in the lights. It's not the Wolfram company. It's the big name, Deboretsky company or something like that. But I've got it in my information, and it's that showcase that I've got with the clear blown bulbs, which are 12 volt. Every one of those bulbs still work, by the way. But anyhow, this all took place in when Dad was 11 years old. So it made it when he came over. It was about 11 years old when he left Austria. So he was 12 or 13 years old when he was in Hamilton living. And they lived on 1 Cluny Avenue. I still remember the address. And Grandpa and Grandma opened up a delicatessen while he did the work on the electrical business, trying to get that going. And that was their home, and she managed the little grocery store. And I remember it well because I'd go there, and when I was young, and the lights would flicker because they didn't have, in Canada, they didn't have the kind of continuous power that we had, and it was worked on 40 cycles, I think it was. So 40 cycles will not give you a continuous light. It flickered. All lights in Canada flickered.
How old were you?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I would have been about 10, 11, 12, all that time. And numerous times, every time you went to my mom's house in Westport, Ontario, Kingston was about halfway, a little less than halfway. So we always stopped. Every trip back and forth to Mom's, we always stopped at Kingston to say hello.
Grandma Jackson, your mother.
Always stopped. Even when we
What were you saying? We stopped at whose house?
at Kingston.
Okay, it was
And I
Grandma.
said Kingston is east of Toronto, and it was about the halfway point, not quite.
But it was Grandma.
It was Grandma Joshke and Grandpa Joshke. And I remember them both well. See, Grandpa Joshke died when I was about 13, 12 or 13. And I went back to that funeral. And they were all there. But, and the place never changed. You still had the flickering lights. And the food was superb always with the delicatessen they had there with all the sausage and stuff, all homemade, most of it. And Grandpa made all the wines for the church. But anyhow, he was in the electrical business. Well, right at that time, 3 years later or so, World War I broke out with the assassination of, who was the prince or the king of World War I? World War I was in the 1915 type time. World War II was in your age, Muriel. But yeah, I'm talking about Grandpa. And what happened is there was very strong feeling against the Germans.
Right. And that's why
that's why Dad tells the story of Grandpa. All Germans' heritage had to get rid of any weapons or anything else. And he remembers going down with his dad to the Hamilton River with pearl-handled revolvers that had been in the family for centuries, and dumping them into the Hamilton to the river.
Yes, sir.
But anyhow, I had the fondest memories of 1 Cluny Avenue. But when World War I broke out, that completely eliminated the electric business because it was sponsored by my grandfather, who was from Germany. And Germany was the arch enemy in World War I.
Right.
And so all of the populace around there wouldn't give him the time of day on something like the electrical business, which is mostly industry that you're trying to get into. And So he went into the plumbing business. And that was a major business, especially when Prohibition took place, where they had to then convert all of the bars around Canada, where with valves down below where you could cut off the beer from the kegs, and all of a sudden water would come out. So when the police came, everybody was served water. And that's how he made a living, and my dad did a lot of plumbing with his dad, my grandfather.
I didn't know Prohibition took place in Canada too.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The jacuzzi?
Yeah,
I
they were-
did turn it off, Mom.
But that's all, they only worked in Canada. My grandfather never left. He never came to, I don't ever remember my grandfather coming to America, ever. He loved Hamilton, and Dad used to go down and get pitchers of beer for him and bring them home in a bucket, because that's how you did it. There was no refrigeration much or anything. But he always made the wine for St. Anne's Church in Kingston, which is an old church, and was the only church, I think. But he made all the wines in his cellar, and I remember going to his funeral, and we were all drinking that wine with Aunt Mary and everything. It was just a real neat thing. On the negative side, Dad was real strict with his sisters, and when they married out of the church, he never refused to talk to them, ever. Until recent years before he died, he and Aunt Mary reunited and talked. But they went through 20, 30 years of never talking to each other because she married out of the church. And also with Aunt Minnie, same way, both of them married out of the church, and he wouldn't talk to her. And I don't think he ever talked to Aunt Minnie. I think she died, but Aunt Mary, they did through Father Larry. Father Larry was instrumental in getting him back talking to his sister. But I went to that funeral, and Dad would talk to his mother, his sister Carmelita, and that's all. He would not talk to his sisters. And I had a ball with Aunt Mary and Dick and I. We were the only two in that
That
funeral.
had to be awkward.
Ice, freezing cold. We got stranded when we were coming, and Dad left us in the car while he went for an hour or two to try and find somebody to come back and pull the car. We were stranded, snowing like crazy and cold, and heck, no heater running, no motor running, nothing. I'll never forget that.
How old were you?
I would have been 12, 13, so I remember.
What did you do when, for fun, Dad, when you were a kid? You and Uncle Dick and
We
Larry.
had the best times ever. And on Euclid, every summer, of course we had school, all in fall during but we had the big 2 months. We get out of school around June. Every single day, my mom would let us take the oars, and we always carried them, go down to Lake St. Clair, and go out on a wooden boat that Dad bought when we were about that age, about 10 years old, 8 years old. He bought a wooden boat. It was parked down there, but you'd always take the oars so nobody could ever take the boat away. And you simply tie it up with a rope. And we'd go down there every single day of the summer, fishing. Gone all day, pack sandwich or something, and come back in the evening, about 3 or 4 o'clock for dinner. Every day of the summer. If we weren't going back, now I'd always go back
Farm.
for a month or so to the farm, Dick and I both, but the rest of the time, we were always on that water.
who's we? You, Uncle Dick and Larry?
Yeah, just no, Dick and I, Larry not so much, but it was usually Dick and I and Larry Summerfield, a neighbor. And we were all in our early 10, 11, 12, and a lot of great memories. I remember one time we were out there, and storms, many times storms would come up, as they do in Lake St. Clair, like that, and that can be a real rough sea. And what we'd do is always just tip the boat and hang on and ride it out, or the boat would be coming in, and we would do it. That's all we do. Every time there's a storm, just tip the boat. Because all we had is an anchor. We didn't have fishing gear.
How many times did that happen?
A lot.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I'll bet you a dozen times that we came in with that boat upside down. You can't get it back up. We just sit on the bottom and have a ball. But I remember one time, one of those storms came up and we had the boat upright. And there was a raft that sat out in the water that was fairly deep, about 8 feet deep, 7 feet deep. And kids would come out and they could swim to the raft after you could only walk out on you know, on the shore, on the bottom of the lake, so far that you have to swim to the raft. And one kid, about our age, 12 or 13 years old, came out with his little brother. And he wound up with his little brother on his back. And they were trying to make it to that raft. And winds came up, which come up suddenly on Lake St. Clair. And they were just knocking him over with his little brother. And he's on his back, and he couldn't make any progress against the waves to get to the raft. And they were drowning, screaming and everything else. And we got over there in time with a boat to pull them both in and get them into shore. The three of us, Larry, Summerfield, Dick, and I. Did I tell you that story? That's a fact.